Help support the show by joining the Patreon or becoming a YouTube member. Also, hit that like button and subscribe if you want more Browns-focused content.
Real quick, before this video starts, I want to ask this question out to my audience. Do you want to play in a connected franchise or connected dynasty with me on College Football 26 or Madden 26? If you're interested in doing so, join the Patreon dog check tier. Comment on the post that I have pinned on the Patreon and let me know what system you are on and what your username is so I can get you signed up. Again, sign up on the Patreon, dog check tier. You'll see the post if you're dog check tier, and we can do the connected franchise and connected dynasty, which I think will be a lot of fun if we can get enough people on it. When we get a solid amount of people, we'll start the league, and then we can add more as the league continues of people who want to join. So don't think that just because you missed the deadline, you can't join. We'll add people as the league evolves because, we're not going to play every game for the season in 1 week or something like that. So if you're interested in doing like that, you want a game with me, get in a competitive league with me, let me know. But that being said, hope you guys enjoy this video. So camp has gone around for a little while. We've had the open section of camp that was open to the fans. I've gone down to Berea to watch a couple of these practice. The Browns are now doing joint practice with the Philadelphia Eagles, and they've already completed a joint practice session with the Carolina Panthers. So we've seen enough of camp to know who's looking good consistently and who's showing that they need some improvement. And also, we've watched enough or heard enough to know that there are some names that we expected to hear more that we're not hearing. And that's what I want to talk about today. I want to talk about guys that I really need to see more from. Now, some of this is just literally, I just need to see you more. Some of this is, I don't know how you're doing, but I would love to hear your name more. And some of this is, I'm actually hearing your name a lot and I would want to see you play better. So, there's a range of all of this that we're going to go through. I'll describe it as I get through the list. I got 5 names here. Let's go through them. Dewan Jones is one of the guys here that I just want to know more about how his camp is going. It started off great. He lost a ton of weight. He looks like he's in better shape. Awesome. Other than that, I'm not really hearing much about Dewan. Now, the clips come out and he's getting beat against Myles Garrett. It's not much I could take away from that. Myles Garrett's doing that to every tackle in the league. Like, it's not really, I'm not going to freak out because my tackle's not doing good one-on-one with Myles Garrett. Literally, nobody's going to let their tackle go one-on-one against Myles Garrett for an extended period of time in the NFL. He's Myles Garrett, right? He's a freak of nature. He's a beast. He needs to slow down when he drives, but he does all of that stuff at a high level, and that's all great. But Dewan, what I want to feel better about is this bet that the Browns are placing at him with left tackle, because a lot is hinging on that bet that the Browns have with Dewan Jones, right? If you look at how the Browns' offensive line is structured, they got Dewan Jones at left tackle, they got Joe Bitonio at left guard, Ethan Pulisic at center, Wyatt Teller at right guard, and then Jack Conklin at right tackle. The issue with the Browns' offensive line isn't that they're not talented. Jack Conklin is a former All-Pro. Wyatt Teller is an All-Pro. Joe Bitonio is an All-Pro. Ethan Pulisic is a pretty good center. The problem with the Browns' offensive line is that it's very expensive and it's old, right? So you're going to have to swap out some pieces here and there. We know Joe Bitonio is going to retire soon. Wyatt Teller, he's not at the age where you have to really worry about him, so you're fine there with Wyatt. Jack Conklin, he's weird because he's not as old as you think Jack Conklin is. The problem with Jack Conklin is he's just been injured all the time, so you're still concerned about Jack Conklin's ability to stay healthy there, right? So you got Jack Conklin you're potentially going to have to replace. Maybe, definitely Joe Bitonio. You can keep Ethan Pulisic, you can keep Wyatt Teller, and then you don't know what you're doing with left tackle because Dewan Jones is the left tackle, but we don't know what's really going on down there. The difference between having to replace 2 guys and having to replace 3 guys is massive. Now, the Browns already have some replacements on the roster, right? Maybe Luke Whippler could step in the center if Ethan Posick has to go, but I don't anticipate Ethan Posick going anytime soon. Zach Zinter can step in for Joel Bitonio, right? That's what they drafted him for. And that can cut down the number. But if Dewan Jones can hold down the left tackle spot, that means the Browns are really only looking for one player, and that's another tackle for this offense. And that's a much more doable fix than anything else. And right now, what has me, I don't know if I would say I'm concerned, but piqued, in a neutral way, is that we just haven't heard about Dewan Jones, positive or negative, outside of losing reps to Myles Garrett and winning a couple reps against, some guys in the Panthers camp. It's been a pretty quiet camp for Dewan. Now, maybe that's a good thing. Maybe a quiet camp is a good thing for Dewan. Usually for offensive linemen, that is the case. But given how desperate this team is for a left tackle, I imagine if the media that were there every day saw Dewan kicking ass at left tackle most of the time, people would be over the moon excited about it. So I don't know if this means that he's kicking ass. Like, I think this means that he's, treading water there at left tackle. I don't know what that's going to look like during the season, right? So Dewan Jones, would absolutely love to hear more from him. It's been kind of quiet. They're placing a huge bet on him being the left tackle to make their lives easier going forward. And it's just going to be massive for this team what happens with Dewan Jones. Second guy, Cedric Tillman. Cedric Tillman is somebody who, if you look at his production, right, when he was getting targets after Deshaun Watson got benched, he was on pace for about 1,100 yards. Like, big production. A lot of hopes wrapped up into Cedric Tillman. Part of the reason the Browns weren't as gung-ho about making a move for a wide receiver as the internet was for the Cleveland Browns is because they saw Cedric Tillman drastically different than I think a lot of people in the Browns community or online that cover the Browns see the Cedric Tillman in. Which Cedric Tillman are we going to get? Are we going to get the guy who was pretty underwhelming his first 18, 20 games or so of his NFL career? Or are we going to get more of the guy that we saw right before he had that concussion that ended his season? Again, he was on pace for about 1,100 yards if he would have been able to maintain what that pace that he had over 17 games. So that's the big question with Cedric. Which one are we getting? Now, we've seen some good stuff out of Cedric Tillman in camp. We've seen some stuff that's not the greatest, right, with Cedric Tillman. But I'm just not hearing enough from him, right? I've heard more about Deontay Johnson having great days in camp than I've heard about Cedric Tillman. And that, to me, has me, again, neutrally peaked. Like, okay, I'm noticing that. Don't know what to make of it right now. Don't want to kind of react to something that hasn't happened yet. But Cedric Tillman, would love to hear more about him, especially given that he's going to be in a more enhanced role this season. Like, is he somebody who can get you 600 to 800 yards? Can he be as serviceable too? I'll tell you this, from going to camp, when you see Cedric Tillman in person, he's massive. He's a big guy. He's that big body wide receiver that we've been saying the Browns have needed for a while. But then you don't really see very many clips of him doing big bodied wide receiver stuff. So Cedric, there was a moment there right after they traded Amari Cooper, right after Deshaun Watson got benched, where you're looking at the Browns and you're saying to yourself, oh man, they got something in Cedric Tillman. Then he gets the concussion. You don't really get to see him more. Jerry Jeudy starts to show out, and that becomes a storyline in the wide receiver room. But Cedric Tillman was the big story for a while there. And the question is, which Cedric Tillman are we going to get? I think that's a big question mark there. Cam Mitchell. Now, this is the guy I mentioned that we've actually heard Cam Mitchell's name a lot, and it hasn't been good. The Browns are leaning on Cam Mitchell to do a lot here. And I think I'm more concerned than most people are about Cam Mitchell. But, man, it seems like every time I see of a great quarterback highlight, I look at the highlight and I see number 29, getting beat somewhere in that highlight. And that's not the most heartwarming feeling. It concerns me a bit here. Now, this is the one where, like the other two, I'm neutrally concerned. I'm straight up concerned about Cam Mitchell here. I hope I'm wrong. I hope Cam Mitchell is looking a lot better behind the scenes, that his process is well, and that Jim Schwartz is happy with where he is, and that during the season, it's not going to look as bad as it's looked in individual drills and during training camp and during the preseason. I really hope that that is the case. I'm not confident that that's the case, and that's why Cam Mitchell is here on this list. I don't know what's going on with that. You know, I'm very concerned about the slot corner position. I'm very concerned about that being a gaping weakness for this football team. And I think a slot corner weakness for a team that's going to be as aggressive in the pass rush here as the Browns hope to be is a big problem for this football team, given that Jordan Hicks retired, given that JOK is out for the year. Two guys who would have been vital in being able to take off the load from your slot corner, gone, right? Carson Schwarzenegger's looked great at the Mike position. You know that Devin Bush has looked good there. But Mahmoud Diabate, whatever other linebacker you want to throw out there, their strength has not been the ability to cover out the slot. And because Carson Schwarzenegger has to hold down the Mike position, he's not going to be in the slot covering guys very often. So there's a huge gap there. There's a huge hole there in the slot, from linebackers to defensive backs that you've relied on to jump. Well, not defensive backs, but specifically safeties that you've relied on to jump in there. You know, you're down a lot there, and you're only down to like Miles Harden and Cam Mitchell, maybe Tony Brown, like maybe Nick Needham. It feels bad at that slot corner position. And I'm very concerned about that being a weakness that offenses can easily key in on and get the ball out their hands successfully, even if they're facing a significant pass rush, right? You want to see things that allow, like if you're the Browns, you have to imagine your pass rush as fire, right? And the best thing for fire is flammable stuff and oxygen, right? Oxygen helps fire grow, and so does like wood and things that can burn. And what the slot corner feels like to me is a big fat extinguisher or a big fat blanket over that fire that the Browns can put, where it's just going to be so easy to put out that fire, despite the Browns' defensive line being good. So that's one of my main concerns. I'm not going to lie to you. I'm very concerned about that because the defense is going to be super important for this team. You know, obviously another name I could put on this list is Quincy Junkins, but I would like to see him in camp, period. Like before we even talk about, you know, seeing more from him as a football player. That's obvious, but he's dealing with a legal situation right now. Another player we need to see more from, Dustin Hopkins. We're playing this pretty like chill. I don't like it. I don't like it. We're playing this thing way too chill at the kicker position. And maybe they know that Dustin is going to be all right. And I'm worried about nothing. And I hope that's the case. But it feels pretty casual, right? Even when like not Cody Parkey, I don't know why I went to Cody Parkey, but even when Cade York was out here struggling and we were like, hey, we got to see if this guy's going to kick himself out of camp, we were giving him a lot of field goal attempts in the preseason. We're avoiding giving Dustin Hopkins field goal attempts this preseason. We're going for it. We're not kicking field goals when we're at the 40. We're like we're working on other stuff. It just does not seem to me, and it's obvious to me, that field goal kicking and evaluating Dustin Hopkins is simply not a priority for this football team. And that they feel pretty good about Dustin Hopkins going into next season. I hope that confidence is correct. I don't feel good about it. He looks pretty shaky. You know, he was shaky as hell last year. And this is a football team that's going to be operating on low margins this year, right? That's the reality of this football team. As excited as we can get about this rookie class, as excited as we can get about some of the quarterbacks that the Browns have drafted, The reality is, no matter what happens, they're probably going to have to play a low yield margin style of football, similar to Pittsburgh. And you know how Pittsburgh wins 10 games? It's not simply because Mike Tomlin is standing there on the sideline with his stupid shades looking very stern. It's because they get really good field goal kicking as well, right? So when they get good field position, they can get points. Chris Boswell is good for it. And that very often makes the difference for the Pittsburgh Steelers, right? Like, I make the joke, and I know Pittsburgh fans get mad as hell when I say this, or Tomlin stands get mad as hell when I say it. But honestly, I think that over 500 record is more of a Chris Boswell stat than it is a Mike Tomlin stat, because you can count to like 2 or 3 seasons where the Steelers probably don't go 500 if Chris Boswell isn't one of the better kickers in the planet, right? Field goal kicking is going to matter this year because it's going to affect the margins, right? And this is a team that's going to live on the margins, much like the Steelers have lived on the margins, right? Small stuff is going to matter. Field positioning, punting, being able to flip the field, right? I just mentioned that during the Shador breakdown where he got a backside dig that got him 20, 30 yards upfield. It didn't result in a scoring drive, but what it did do was successfully flip the field, and I thought that was a successful drive for him, right? Especially given that the Browns started with the ball on the 5. Field position, that's going to matter. I don't feel concerned about our punter. Our punter is awesome. Corey Bojorquez, he's good. He's going to be fine. He's going to do his job this year. But, the run game, that's going to be very important. The defense is going to be important, right? And this field goal kicking, it's going to be massively important. This team's going to rely a lot on field goal kicking, and I just don't think we're evaluating this seriously enough, considering just how much of an effect bad field goal kicking can have. I don't want to sit here at the end of the year saying to myself, oh man, we could have made the playoffs, but Dustin Hopkins missed a couple of kicks. Who would have guessed it, right? I don't want to be sitting here saying, oh man, I know the Browns won 6 games, but really they get better field goal kicking. They're probably a 9-win team. I don't want to say that. Now, some people want it because they want a worse record to get a better draft pick. I'm not one of those people. But yeah, I don't want Dustin Hopkins to be the reason we're like, oh, this team underperformed because Dustin Hopkins, should not be the case. And really don't think there's enough sense of urgency there when it comes to evaluating that position. All right, last player I need to see more from is Kenny Pickett. The reason Kenny Pickett's on this list isn't because I'm a believer in Kenny Pickett. I've said that multiple times. I'm not a believer in Kenny Pickett. The reason Kenny Pickett is on this list is because literally, I have no idea what to make of this dude. Like, if I'm trying to be fair, right? My opinion about Dylan coming in, okay, I'm willing to put that aside. If you have a fan base that's annoying you, Shador's fan base seems to be on a lot of people's nerves. Okay, look, I'll put that shit aside. Joe Flacco, at one point, Joe Flacco's fans got on my nerves. I'm willing to put that aside just to evaluate everybody fairly, right? And the same is true of Kenny Pickett. Not a big fan of Kenny Pickett, never been one. But I'll put my own bias aside, knowing that I'm not a big fan of his, and really just want to see a body of work of his to be able to evaluate. And I don't think we've gotten the opportunity to do that. All we've gotten is a ton of 7-on-7 reps, which are pretty meaningless as far as like being able to determine who should start, who shouldn't. Because the 7-on-7 rep, it's not football. There's no pass rush. There's no offensive line to see over. It's just installed. It's really, 7-on-7 is more installed than it is football. So there's not really much you could take away from it. It's not applicable. When it comes to 11-on-11s, we got the man for 2 days before he tore his hamstring, well, not tore it, but messed up his hamstring because he wanted to go sprint in a non-contact practice. Good on you, Kenny. But this means that I don't think the Browns have been able to get any evaluation on this guy. I can't see how they've been able to get an evaluation of him. I'm going to be very critical of the Cleveland Browns if after this lack of being able to get an evaluation, they try to tell me that this dude won the starting job, right? Like right now, it has to be Joe Flacco. That seems like the only way that this whole quarterback competition can roll out, given that Kenny Pickett is confirmed not to be practicing in this joint practice, and that's when the decision is going to be made for the starting quarterback. So, yeah, I would love to come out here and definitively say, I think Kenny Pickett's terrible because this is what I saw from him in camp. I can't say that. I would love to say that Kenny Pickett looks awesome because this is what I saw from him in camp. I can't say that. I can't say that Kenny Pickett looks like anything because we ain't seen Kenny Pickett do shit. Like, we can have our opinions about Dylan Gabriel. We've seen Dylan Gabriel. We can have our opinions about Shedeur Sanders. We've seen Shedeur Sanders. You can have your opinions about Joe Flacco. You've seen Joe Flacco. The one guy that you have not seen was the one guy who this training camp was super important to get an evaluation of, and that's Kenny Pickett. Right? You got time to evaluate Shedeur. You got time to evaluate Dylan Gabriel. They're both on rookie contracts. You don't need to evaluate Joe Flacco. This camp was supposed to be about evaluating Kenny Pickett. Seriously, it was supposed to be about figuring out what Kenny Pickett has. And that's the guy that we've seen the least. I don't know what to do with that. Right? I have not been super negative on this camp. I think a lot of good things have happened for the Browns during this camp. But Kenny Pickett, ultimately, having this whole camp kind of built around the ideal of evaluating him and then popping his hamstring because he wants to sprint full speed in a non-contact, non-padded practice and basically blowing up the entire purpose of this training camp is one of the bigger, I don't want to say disappointments because I'm not disappointed, but it's one of the bigger faux pas I've seen. It truly is. And I don't know what you do with that if you're the Cleveland Browns, to be honest. If it were me and I were in charge and Kenny Pickett wouldn't be here, and honestly, I'd be done with the whole Kenny Pickett thing. But clearly, I'm not in charge because Kenny Pickett's here. Okay, the people in charge have a higher opinion of Kenny Pickett than me, and that doesn't mean that they're absolutely wrong just because I disagree with them. It just means that we disagree, right? Not every time somebody disagrees with them, you got to attack their legitimacy. So yeah, I disagree with them on their evaluation of Kenny Pickett. I think they're wrong on Kenny Pickett, but they like Kenny Pickett. So like, what do you do if you like Kenny Pickett and you've been able to see this little of him? Seriously, I would love to talk to the people who actually do like Kenny Pickett. What do you do with Kenny Pickett right now? Like, now I know what the haters of Kenny Pickett are going to say. I know what the people like me who don't think Kenny Pickett's any good are going to say. I know what y'all going to say. Cut Kenny Pickett. He sucks. I get it. That's how I feel. But if you are a Kenny Pickett supporter, I would love to hear from you. I would truly love to hear from you because I want to know what you do in this situation where the whole camp was about giving this guy a chance to prove it, and then he gets hurt, and he can't prove it, and he's run out of time. Well, what do you do? What do you do there? Would love to know from those in the comment section down below. Everybody else, have a great day. Have an even better night. Peace.